You're listening to the really useful podcast from makeuseof.com. It's the tech podcast for technophobes. I'm Christian Corley, and with me is Ian Buckley. Hi Ian, how are you doing?
Hi there, I'm good. It's nice to be back on the show. Yeah, it's my first time in my my new studio space where I actually have space. It's fantastic.
Excellent. It sounds very. It sounds like you're moving up in the world now with a studio space of your own.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a place I can actually set Arduinos on fire without getting in trouble with my partner. It's a very nice feeling.
On this week's show, we will be looking at ways that you can share Google's search results, how you can report suspicious sites to Google's, and and YouTube's new remaster of old music videos. We'll also be looking at some tips for you, finding out about the ghost broking car insurance scam, the unwritten rules of Facebook friend requests, and how you can get a job in tech without actually knowing about tech. Trust me, it's possible.
Yeah,
and it is, yeah. And there's also some quick new news that's just cropped up today. There's a new Raspberry Pi that's been released.
Yes.
And we'll also be having a quick look at the Bitcoin rally, which has commenced over the past few days. First of all, you can now share Google search results, which this is one of those things that you think, why didn't they do this before, isn't it?
It is a bit odd, considering that like something that presumably takes a lot more tech that I've been doing for a very long time is that if I want to show someone where I am, you can just drop a pin in Google Maps and share it to them, which presumably is a lot more difficult to do than simply just share the text string of whatever you were searching on Google.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find it quite a nice little feature. It's not something that is groundbreaking. It's a little convenience that if you are, if you've exactly as it says, there's an article about it on the Make Use of website, and exactly as it says on that, you're in the past, what you would have to do is either tell them to Google it themselves or use the rather sarcastic "let me Google that for you" website. And yeah, this does feel like a quite nice little way, because search terms can be somewhat difficult. It can be hard to find what you want to find.
Yeah, it can. And it's a great little feature. So if you want to do this, it's currently only available in the Google app for Android. So you open the Google app, do the search, and then click the share icon on the right-hand side of the share bar, and then choose how to share your results as you normally would on a mobile device.
Absolutely. And one interesting feature about it, interesting, I suppose, as a point of view, some people might be mildly horrified by this, but depending on what data you have let Google have about you, when you send that link to someone else, the results they get may actually be tailored slightly more towards what they have shared with Google in terms of data. So it's an interesting thing in that if you want to share a search term that worked for you, presumably it will still work. But if you have vastly different search habits, you might actually get some different results still. Which is a quirk, I think. But in the long run, if you are someone who is comfortable with sharing data in order to improve your search results, I don't think it would be anything that would worry you too much.
No, absolutely not. So yes, that's a nice new feature. And as Ian mentioned, that and everything else we discussed in this week's really useful podcast will be available in the show notes, which you should find wherever it is you get this podcast from. If not, do let us know and we can work in a way of ensuring that they do appear. Okay, so another Google revelation. Google makes it easier to report suspicious sites. And again, this was something that was already possible, but again, it's a surprise that it wasn't as easy as it now is.
Yes. I think I think the way that people view browsing the web in general has changed very quickly, in that in the past people would report suspicious sites, but I think the thinking was that those people would already be quite savvy in order to spot them and wouldn't mind jumping through a few hoops in order to report them. But these days, we're accosted by different forms of, suspicious, like phishing attempts and scams all the time. And it means that you don't necessarily have to be someone who has studied it or knows a huge amount about the web in order to say, no, this is clearly dodgy. Or even if you have a suspicion that something might be dodgy, an easy way to report that is going to make the web safer for everybody. It's a nice idea.
Yeah. I'm not convinced that the previous argument was in any way accurate. There's plenty of services where you could report a site, and I'm not sure. Yeah, it's great to have this feature. I just think it is something that should have been along a long, long time ago, rather than
Oh, yeah.
relying on, as you say, tech-savvy people or security software to like, the McAfee Site Advisor and stuff like that to sort of like monitor what people are clicking on and detecting bad sites and all that kind of thing. It just seems like
An
a
oversight.
be- an oversight. Yeah, I mean, better late than never, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it is. It is an odd thing. Again, it's much like we were saying about the other sharing search feature. It does seem like an odd thing with all of the many amazing things that you can actually do very easily using the software Google produces. It does seem like every now and again they might have had a mild blind spot.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that, and there are there's a method of reporting a site, and I expect it'll become even simpler as time progresses. And
Yes.
Google have the tools in the background to check whether or not it's a legitimate claim for a malicious website.
Absolutely, but as it stands right now, the way to get it is just in the form of an extension. And if you've
Yeah.
ever used, there are various extensions. I know ones that are used by a lot of people are ad blockers. Not that that's particularly good for people like us who are tech writers, but if you are familiar with extensions and that's something that you've done, you'll install it exactly the same way on the Google Chrome extension store. And there's actually, again, a link to the extension in the article on the Make Use Of site that will be in the show notes.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go to some entertainment news. YouTube is remastering hundreds of classic music videos. They've partnered with Universal Music Group with a target of 1,000 iconic music videos to be remastered, upgrading from SD standard definition to HD high definition, bringing them up to modern standards.
Yeah, this is cool.
It is
I'm
cool.
kind of excited about this actually. I'm not going to lie. I know a lot of people like the idea of things being in the original way that they were, but yeah, I mean, the one of the examples that is shown is the Sabotage video by the Beastie Boys, which, in just my opinion, is one of the better videos of all time. And seeing it in HD is amazing. I really
Yeah.
like it.
I think it's going to look better on videos that were filmed on, 16 or 35 millimeter rather than videotape.
Yeah, probably that is probably so. That is something that I don't actually have the knowledge about to properly comment, but I do wonder whether what happens when you combine videotape and the old standard definition compression. I do wonder if those two things together made things look worse, as it were, and whether HD would show faults that you wouldn't have seen before or something like that. But again, it comes down to that thing, which is funnily enough something that we are both interested in, this idea of modern tech and retro things. Obviously, we're both into retro gaming. And yeah, but my initial reaction to this was way more excited about it than I expected. Mostly just because of that Beastie Boys video, I think, really.
Yeah, well, the thing about the video as well, of course, is the US video has a fewer lines of data than European video, doesn't it? So there's going to be, if they're going to update a European video, that's going to look, presumably that will look a bit different. The BBC have been doing a lot of work in remastering old Doctor Who.
Oh, right. Yeah.
There's basically in Doctor Who's original run, there's only 2 episodes that were recorded entirely on film. One was in 1970, and the other was 1996, which was recorded in Canada. And the 1970 episode has been released on Blu-ray, and as is the 1996 episode, and they both look fantastic. Now, more recently, they've started packaging classic videotape, color episodes from the 1970s. They're recorded mostly on videotape, but with film inserts on Blu-ray. And obviously, the film sections look great. The video bits look good. They've been tidied up a lot, and there's better compression, as you say. So it does look better, but obviously it's not going to look as great as something that was recorded on film.
Of course, yeah.
Properly polished up and cleaned up with all the modern tools. But this is interesting. It's exciting. YouTube has already published 100 remastered videos from Boyz II Men, Janet Jackson, Lady Gaga, Meatloaf, The Killers, Tom Petty, and the Beastie Boys. And by the end of next year, 2020, which sounds like the future, but it's not, Well,
very
it is,
soon.
but not that far in the future. YouTube expects all 1,000 titles to be available.
Yeah. It's nice. I mean, like, it's in the grand scheme of things, 1,000 music videos. I'm sure there's going to be something in there for everybody-ish. It's not like everything is suddenly going to start looking amazing, but it's a nice project, and it's something that, it's something that I'll be interested to see. Just because the idea of taking something that was, on old tech and making something that was from that time work with today's tech is something that I'm interested in broadly, So it's a nice project. Yeah, like I say,
Yeah.
that Beastie Boys video, man, it got me. Nostalgia.
Okay, I've just lost my window, so 2 ticks. There we go.
No.
All right, let's move on, because as we record this on Monday the 24th of June, we've got big news for DIYers and retro game fans. There is a brand new Raspberry Pi released today. I've already got my order in.
I haven't yet, but the only reason I haven't is just because I'm trying to work out whether I want to just get a baseline one or whether I want to really splash out and get the full 4 gig of RAM version.
I went for the 4 gig because it seemed sensible. So this new Raspberry Pi, we're not going to dwell on it too long because we're probably going to be talking about this in our retro gaming episode, which is going to be recording in a few weeks' time. There's 3 versions: a $35 version with standard 1 gigabyte of RAM. There is a $45 version with 2 gigabytes and a $55 version with 4 gigabytes RAM. But there's a lot more new to it than that. There is a USB 2 ports. There's 2 of those. There's also 2 USB 3 ports. There's the same gigabit internet, the same onboard Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. There's now a USB Type-C power supply. There's a more powerful processor on a brand new chip. And there are 2 micro HDMI ports that support 4K displays.
Yes, and that is going to be quite a big thing, I think, because I have fiddled around in the past with dual displays on Raspberry Pis, and it's something that it's always been doable. There's been ways of doing it, but you've struggled because of performance, and you've struggled for various reasons. And having 2 native 4K outputs is a big thing. I do wonder how, even with the 4 gigabyte version, I do wonder how it's going to perform. But I guess that's something we'll find out when we get them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It strikes me I didn't order a new case, and I may need one. Doh. But other than that, yeah, I'm looking forward to that coming. That's out now, and it's ridiculously affordable computer that does so many things, either as dedicated tasks or you can multi-use it. I've recently set up a Minecraft server to play with my young children.
Nice.
What else? I've got Ubuntu running on another one.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good. Well, it's better now to do Minecraft on a Raspberry Pi. As a Minecraft server on a Raspberry Pi, because the earlier versions would only play. You'd have a choice of either playing the main version or playing Pocket Edition, but the current server software supports both.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that is really nice. Yeah, the thing about this, which I think is going to be its real key, because as I've written about and as we've talked about in the past, the Raspberry Pi isn't the only thing that's like this. There are many competitors to it, but the Pi has such a large community and already so many things written for it that it's not only that this is a fantastic new machine. Retroactively, there's a huge amount of projects, whether it is retro gaming or a media center or doing something in the DIY realm or servers, as we talked about, that maybe struggled a bit with the power of the older Raspberry Pis. And as they keep coming out and getting more powerful, you'll probably find that any projects that you already have running, you can make run much faster. And at the price they're selling it at, it's fantastic. I'm really happy that they are still focusing on a kind of slightly lower price point. Because there are very powerful single board computers out there. Some I own, some I've just written about. But there's something about the Raspberry Pi that just is, the community is huge. And even if you're not particularly tech savvy, some dedicated Googling or searching, of course, on Make Use Of will definitely help you work out what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great way into doing more technical things. And also, I mean, my introduction to Linux as like using Linux was really through the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. I think realistically, me too. I'd fiddled with it before, but it wasn't until I had to do DIY projects on the Pi, which was my
Yeah.
in with the Pi. I did that before any retro gaming or media stuff. That learning about Linux, I learned about the command line through Raspberry Pi for sure.
Yeah, same here, same here. Okay, so that's happening. We'll be talking about that in more detail in a few weeks' time. Okay, let us move on to just one other brief note. You may have heard about Facebook Libra, which is a cryptocurrency that Facebook is releasing. It just so happens that they've announced that in the same period of time where Bitcoin has started rallying again, and you're going to see more news reports about Bitcoin. They've already started. And for more information on that, we suggest, if that's something you want to learn more about, head over to the Make Use of Sisters site, blocksdecoded.com, who also run a podcast with Gavin Phillips and James Frew. Are you on it as well, Ian?
I haven't been yet, but I probably will be on the not the next or the next one, but the one after that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm also a member of Blocks Decoded. And yeah, this is, I mean, obviously go to Blocks Decoded to hear about it because they'll be talking about it in much more depth. But this is a surprising but a very good thing for anyone that is interested in Bitcoin. And it's interesting that it is timed, just as Libra Coin is launched. But yeah, rather than spend time on it here, the guys at Blocks Decoded will be able to talk about it in much more detail than we will.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, head on over there via the link in the show notes. Okay, we're going to give you some tips and tricks and productivity advice and security advice now. Hopefully, we'll fulfill all of those promises. There is a online car insurance scam called ghost broking.
Yes.
It's a form of Go on.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, obviously we should talk broadly about what this is, but just from a completely personal point of view, if you're someone who will hear this and think, oh yeah, that doesn't sound like something that would happen to me. Before I knew the show notes for this week, I was talking with a friend of mine who lives in England who has literally in the last few weeks fallen foul of one of these scams. Ooh. They are quite prevalent. But before we go into that, let's actually talk about what ghost broking is. So do you want to take that, or should I?
No, you carry on. You carry on.
Steam on. All right. So there is a fantastic write-up of it on the Make Use of website, which again will be in the show notes. But there are generally two ways that a ghost broking scam will work. A lot of these people will they may have their own websites, but they'll operate through social media. And the general idea is they say, I am an insurance broker. I know the insurance sites. I know how to get you the best deal. So instead of getting it yourself, get it through me. And then after that, one of two things may happen. One is that they will just fake the insurance documents that you get back. So you think you have insurance and you do not, and they just keep your money and disappear. And of course, that still means that you would have broken the law if you got pulled over without insurance. Unfortunately, that still would mean that you would get in trouble with the police. And the other thing they do, which is even more convincing, is they will actually legitimately set up an insurance set up insurance for you, but then they will cancel the insurance and keep the refund. Now, this isn't the only type of scam that works this way, but I think because so many people rely on transport and because social media is so far reaching, it's growing, especially with younger people who maybe are getting their first vehicles and maybe don't have the budget and really want to save money. But I mean, had you come across this before?
When it was pitched to me by Philip Bates, I hadn't come across it. I wasn't aware that it existed. I mean, I'm very proactive with everything, so I just sort of like go out and find what I want to buy, what insurance I need, whatever, do a bit of research, and then subscribe or pay for it or whatever. So it's not really. I assumed everyone was like that, rather than waiting for insurers to come to them. So
funny you say that, because I'm similar. Yeah, I'm similar. I do that. I search for things myself and I'll do it. I think that there's a part of me that kind of realizes that there are many people out there that just want things to be simple, and you can blame them. And these people, this is what these people are preying on. They're preying on the idea of saying, don't worry about it. Insurance is complicated, but I'll make it easy for you. And whenever anyone is saying that for you, you have to obviously be very careful that they are in a position that you can trust.
Absolutely, yeah. So, full explanation on that and how to avoid it. you will find on makeuseof.com. Nice work by Philip Bates there.
It's a great article, yeah.
Facebook friend requests, unwritten rules and hidden settings. Now, God Almighty, I'm probably not the best person to talk about this because I'm terrible on Facebook. But you will find when you go into Facebook that you find that you can make friends with people, and there's a long list of friends that have been suggested to you.
Yes.
Now, what I will tell you about the friends that have been suggested to you, even if you say I don't want to be friends with this person, that list will reappear a few days later.
Yes, it's a feature that they are very, very keen to keep in your face. It depends who you are as to whether that particular feature will be useful for you. These days, I'm not as active on Facebook as I used to be, but as someone who is very, very involved in a local and international comedy scene, it was what I used a lot. And in that sense, the Facebook friend suggestions could be quite useful because a lot of the time it would be suggesting comedians and or promoters who were in either a similar place to be geographically or just doing similar things. However, the suggestion algorithm is not necessarily an invitation to make friends with people that you do not know, which is kind of basic etiquette, but I think online that can be lost somewhat.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, some of the people I'm related to, but I don't particularly want to engage with them on Facebook. So
yeah.
So we've Tina Siever's released quite an in-depth look at the unwritten rules and hidden settings in Facebook and the whole friends thing and the friend requests menu and how to find people that you know, and obviously you should make sure that they are the people that you know, because there are people with the same name. I imagine there's multiple Ian Buckleys. I know there are multiple Christian Corleys, which came as a surprise to me.
Yeah, there are multiple Ian Buckleys. In fact, if you Google Ian Buckley, you will find there is a very large MMA fighter who is also from the same part of the world as me. Weirdly enough,
really,
I'm pretty sure. I might be mixing two people up. I'm fairly sure he's northeast of England based MMA fighter and teacher. But the article that Tina's written is fantastic. It is an almost exhaustive list of everything that you will need to know. The only tip from it that I think is just one that is worth sharing, just because it's been so useful to me, like I say, as someone who used Facebook for networking but didn't necessarily want to see everyone's status updates, is if you click on the little three dots on anyone in your feed, you can unfollow them. And that means that when you go to Facebook, you won't see anything they've written unless you go to their profile. And that can be useful if there's someone you want to remain in contact with, but don't necessarily want to know what their dog ate for breakfast that day. But yeah, this is a very full, very good article written by Tina Siever, which will be in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. And the dog probably had its breakfast for breakfast. So a couple of quick tips though, it's worth mentioning. I didn't know this. It's there's a limit of 5,000 friends on Facebook.
I did not know that.
I don't know anyone who has 5,000 friends, but
yeah, me neither.
It sounds excessive to me. Maybe a bit needy. I don't know. And you can also be blocked from sending friend requests if you've sent too many or have many unanswered friend requests, or if people match requests to spam. So, there's a lot going on in that. So, take the time to read through that. Lots of good tips, lots of useful screenshots to help you find your way around the friend request system in Facebook. Let's move on to our final discussion today, which is non-programming tech jobs and careers.
Yes. Now, this is something that I think there is a lot of misinformation about getting into tech, and one of the biggest ones, which I think is only a partial lie, and I'll explain why in a minute. But one of the biggest things is that if you want to be in tech, you need to learn to code.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the reason why I say I think it's only a partial lie is because I'm going to completely, almost straight away, go slightly against that by saying I think the truth of the matter is you don't need to code to get into tech. When you are in tech, you'll probably realize there's a certain level of coding that will be useful to you, but that isn't something that you have to necessarily worry about first.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm trying to come up with a simple example. There's a big list of examples here in this in the article that you have written, but I think one perfect example is number 2 on the list that you have written, which is UX, that's user experience, or UI, that's user interface specialist. Now, it's almost a meme, but it's a very accurate one, that most programmers aren't necessarily the best creative aesthetic artists. That is, these days there's a lot of people that wear many hats, but realistically, a lot of people who make things work in the background aren't necessarily great at the aesthetic design of the front end. If you are someone that is skilled at making nice things and are very good at thinking of the way that you interact with things and the way that you, even buttons on your phone or buttons on a website, you can get into that without needing to code at all, because it's the programmer's job in order to link all of those things together.
Yeah.
But I mean, as I say, this is an article that you actually wrote, so I imagine it's something that you've looked into in a bit more depth than me.
Which one I've updated. I've rewritten quite a bit of it. And I mean, generally speaking, I mean, system admin and general IT jobs, you don't need to know programming for the general IT jobs. For the system admin, then there's probably a bit of Visual Basic that you would need.
Yeah.
.NET. But at the same time, in my experience of people who have been system admins, 100% not necessary. Technical writing, you would probably need to understand what you're writing about.
Absolutely.
That's technical writing. That's largely to do with reporting on the development of software or producing manuals, documentation for software and hardware. Marketing and sales, again, don't believe there's any requirement for any coding there. Tech journalism, blogging and media, again, don't believe there's any necessary for coding there. Software and games testing, you would need to know enough to be able to report on error messages and that kind of thing. Positions in steps that have been carried out, error messages that appear. So again, I don't believe there's that much. I wouldn't. Project and program management and project management are kind of interchangeable, and I do feel that you can do both without it, but I think it's useful to have it.
Yeah, I think broadly, I mean, there's several things on this list. For example, there are some fantastic writers for our site, Make Use Of, that do not do any coding, and it doesn't affect them at all because they're not writing about things that require that knowledge.
Yeah.
And there are many things on this list where you really do not need to know coding at all. And again, as I mentioned, as my example, the whole UX or UI design stuff, it's more the kind of thing that if you are someone that has those aesthetics, you will be sought after for that reason. And you'll probably find as your career goes on that there are the surface level ways that the code interacts with your user interface that you would just learn naturally. But what you don't need to do is say, okay, I want to go into aesthetic design and then spend money on an expensive coding course that might not actually help. In the long run, it may, and experience is good to have. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do in tech these days, and as time goes on, it'll only get more. I mean, the way that things are built. If you want an odd example, which goes back a little way, there was a time when to build a website, you would have to learn HTML and CSS and perhaps JavaScript, and then websites like what's it called, Squarespace? Is that the website building thing I'm thinking of? Which are just drag and drop came along because they made an interface for you to.
There's that, and there's Wix, and there's many
Wix,
others. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, absolutely. No, this is a nice rewrite, Christian. It covers a lot of ground for people that might want to get into tech.
I think as well, it's I mean, a few months ago there was a lot of talk on social media and Reddit and Twitter about certain websites releasing their employees, and they were websites with low reputation, and a lot of the reaction to some of the trash that these people have been writing, who then made unemployed, was to learn to code.
Yeah.
And, that isn't necessary if you're a writer. You could move from doing job A in writing online, blogging, whatever, into job B without having to learn a code. Learn to code is not a thing that needs to be done. I do believe tech journalism is a growing area, which seems somewhat odd to say at this stage. But, there are more and more tech-based sites like Make Use Of popping up at the moment. So I do believe it is a growth area. And I think particularly sites that are in other languages, such as Spanish or one of the Indian languages or one of the Chinese languages, they're the ones that are going to do, they're like the growth areas for these.
Absolutely, yeah.
I have I'm just going to make a small personal plug. I've launched a website called techblogger.co.uk, which looks at how you can become a tech blogger. I've been doing this since 2008, 7, 8 sort of time. So I've been at this for quite a while now, and in that time, I've moved from website to website. Worked for some very small websites, worked for some big websites. I worked for print publications. I've appeared on online TV and on local radio talking about technology. So there is plenty to learn in this zone. If you want to get into writing online, then tech blogging is probably the way in. So if you want to learn more, do click the show notes for that site and find out what's going on with that. There's always jobs for tech sites. If you go to the blogging sites and you're interested in writing, you go to the blogging websites, you will find tech jobs.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's something that I think even if you are just starting out and you're trying to get some experience, I think a very important thing to remember is that there are experienced writers out there who will help you, much like you were just saying with techblogger.co.uk, and also there are a lot of sites which are professional sites but are willing to take on people, because if you are someone who is willing to learn and has an interest in tech, at the end of the day, they will help you learn to become a better writer. There are very few employers who employ creatives that aren't interested in helping them improve. And I think, there's no need to have any sort of imposter syndrome about it. If you're interested and you want to do it, maybe spend a bit of time looking at how others do it, and then try and get in touch with people, because ultimately, the more people that are trying to get into this market, the general quality of things should improve, and there's always going to be new tech that needs explaining. No matter how many articles I write, at the end of the day, if someone asked me to explain how TikTok worked, the app, I wouldn't have a clue.
Well, I think today's news is a case in point. We found these new features on Google that weren't there before, and there's a new Raspberry Pi out.
Absolutely, yeah.
So and then we've got the business, we've got the Facebook cryptocurrency, we've got the rally on Bitcoin. There's always something new in the world of tech that needs to be explained or talked about. So
absolutely.
Yep. So that brings us to the end of this week's really useful podcast with me, Christian Corley, and Ian Buckley there.
Thank you for having me on again. It's a pleasure.
Always good, always good. Ian and I will be back in a few weeks' time talking about Raspberry Pis in a bit more depth once again, and that'll be a part of a kind of a two-part discussion on retro gaming. Until then, I'll be back with another co-host next week. You can find the really useful podcast on makeuseof.com, on iTunes, Stitcher.com, and pretty much anywhere you collect your podcast. And if you can't, let us know. Until next week, it's goodbye.
Bye-bye.